I'll be reading poems mainly from my new book, which is coming out soon. Of course, I'm preoccupied with it. But partly to illustrate the genesis of some themes in that book, to illustrate perhaps my first attempts at trying to handle what I find to be a pervasive theme of the new book, violence, both public and private. I will read a few poems from the first book, and I'll start off with a couple of love poems, 3 love poems from it, the first 2 of which are rather nervous attempts to write poems very self-consciously about love, or in the first case, balked love in a modern, technologically sophisticated city environment. The first is called Technologies. On Commonwealth, on Marlborough, the gull beaks of magnolia were straining upward like the flocks harnessed by kings in storybooks who lusted for the moon. 6 days we mooned into each other's eyes mythologies of dune and dawn, naked to the Atlantic sun, loving and loving, to and fro on Commonwealth, on Marlborough, our whole half-hours. And where our bloods crested, we saw the bruise-red buds tear loose the white impeded shapes of cries. And when our whitest hopes tore at the wind with wings, it seemed only a loony dream we dreamed. Such heavy machination of cars and motels confronted love on Commonwealth, on Marlborough. They do the trick with rockets now, with methodologies of steel, with industry or not at all. But so, sweet love, do these white trees that dare play out their lunacies for all they are, for all they know, on Commonwealth, on Marlborough. This next is called To His Shy Mistress, shy being short and slang for Chicago, C-H-I. It's in 5 parts, numbered, and they might represent roughly in the action of the poem the 5 hours of the morning, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4, 5. To His Shy Mistress. April, the city, wrapped in unaccustomed grace, goes scarlet where they slapped a garden in her face. Right in the sunken place she found her rotten set of ivory towers gapped when the last fare pulled out. We head out for the park from Iris and Rose's bar, watching the dancers bear their little almost all, letting the whiskey work, lusty and lachrymal, has primed us. It's not far, it might as well be fall. 2. The elms along the drag, so mop and yet so fag, these pigeon-breasted hags with their knobby arms a wag climactically above a congregation of Iris and Rose's love, have shaken off their doves. Bare ruined chorus lines, for what they are they stand. The winos give them a hand. Where amber light refines our company of flowers to wax, it may be hours before some blue coat shines his hunger onto ours. 3. Well, we didn't come to waltz, we didn't come to dance, we come to Rose and Irises. Irises, man. Their shapes may be piracies, their colors may be false, but you know you've seen a dance when they shake that schmaltz. 4. Winds of morning sift down through the heavy wires and branches like a gift of tongues. Our voices drift lazily on a wash of motors, brushes, tires, street cleaning, the soft flush of old Rose as she retires. We'll make it, worlds of time. Even the winos seem posted to see us home, and shoring up the elms, shoring up the L, lighting up an L&M butt, they serve as well as any sentinel. 5. Behind us the gates lock. The iron rolling stock of the bankrupt CTA jolts and gets underway. This is the only rock. Give with your knees and sway close to the very wreck they had here yesterday. Back of the yellowed laces, flaunting past our faces, dispirited embraces, yellow bed after bed, with some who will curse bread, with some who will free races, the sooty slut replaces her defeated dead. This next one's a sonnet, somewhat different in spirit. I'm happy to report it's a little more autobiographical than the others, too. It's called On First Looking In on Blodgett's, Keats's, Chapman's, Homer, Summer, 1/2 credit, Monday, 9 to 11. Mellifluous as bees, these brittle men droning of honeyed Homer give me hives. I scratch, yawn like a bear, my arm arrives at yours, O honey, and we're back again, me the Balboa, you the Darien, lording the loud Pacific sands, our lives as hazarded as when a petrel dives to yank the dull sea's coverlet, or when, breaking from me across the sand that's rink and record of our weekend, boning up on the romantic agony, you sink John Keats, a good surf fisher's cast out, plump in the sun's wake, and the parched pages drink that great whale's blanket party, hump and hump. Another sonnet, this one now from the new book, although it followed not too long after that one. This called Out in the Cold. All day today the seagulls cried. All day they cried, if not because of you, then not at least because I asked them to. I've got enough poor bastards on my side. I'm not a Greek. I can be satisfied to share a chorus with the shrill sea mew without pretending it's an interview with souls plucked from the shipwrecked as they died. I've got enough cold company. The guys you used to tell me how you used to see before I came along and you got wise. Where are they now? In what capacity? Those dear, well-meant, unsatisfactory approximations of the eventual me. Something shorter on the same theme called Jealousy. A horse of 16 hands galloping, minus the cart, minus the horse, but you, Godiva. And here, yet another sonnet. The new book is full of sonnets. At least I hope they're interestingly different from each other in form, line length, more important than that, in cadence. This is called Birmingham Private Business. Finally, the rotation orders cut, put into action, one set pocketed. I stood in a Bremerhaven staging shed and felt like this, or not exactly, but I tell it that way and you take it, slut, pig, shots, and sink here with me into the red leather, stickier in the heat than bed, pending the last licked, folded, and pasted shut thing, what he comes out brandishing, the smile of our guardian, guide, and Alabama lawyer. I stood there gawking at her. They swung in freight. USS Upshur, sweaty as a destroyer, exalted, crushed, loving again too late. You will be irresistible a while. This one's called The Starry Night. Faraway hands are folded and folded, or pick at the threads in the lap of blackness, or spool and spool at the tenantless tangle of blackness, of emptiness. They are the stars. You can see them flash like the bone-white fingers of finicky ladies, and far and away the depth of their cunning is distance, a tissue of distances. Their heads are down, they are plummeting downward. We cling to our mill-wheel meadows, their heads are bowed to the task. No comet commotion of gazes effaces the emptiness. On the rest-home porches, at paranoid random, great-aunt and great-grandmother jaw like fates till we wish them to heaven. They give us our wishes. We cling to the earth and each other's flesh. And ours is the flaw in the nets of blackness, and theirs is the task by the great sea wall, the mending, the never mending of blackness, of emptiness. Well, that was a kind of elegy, cosmological meditation on death, and in spite of it all, love poem. There are a few elegies in the new book for particular people, and I'd like to read 3 of them now. The first 2 also in the form of sonnets. This is called For an American Burial, for Doris, for John. John Holmes was a very fine poet and teacher of poets who lived in Boston most of his life, and this is addressed to Doris, his wife, after he died. Slowly out of the dust-bedeviled air, and off the passing blades of the gang plow, and suddenly in state, as here and now, the earth gathers the earth is fair, all that the earth demands is the earth's share, all we embrace and revel in and vow never to lose, always to hold somehow, we hold of earth in temporary care. Baby, the sun goes up, the sun goes down, the roads turn into rivers under your wheels, houses go spinning by, the lights of town scatter and close, a galaxy unreels, this endlessness, this readiness to drown, this is the death he stood off, how it feels. And this called Rome, 1965. Here where the prairies flock to look askance, where God, Keats, Trajan, and Liz go down as one irresistible fish story, priests are in, from fervid Senegal, from godless France, and here with deliberative circumstance, for 3 years now the burial of Pope John in exquisite stages has been going on. He took a bad name, gave it a second chance. Peter, thou art an igneous intrusion across the marble face of so damned much, thy coziness an architect's illusion, thy open arms cold caverns to the touch, gray plains, you ache for any old profusion of dogs, cats, cars, nuns, Iowans, and such. At least I think of that as an elegy to and for Pope John. This one's called Of Late. The first long line of it is obviously from a newspaper story, at least I think you'll remember it from last fall. Stephen Smith, University of Iowa sophomore, burned what he said was his draft card. And Norman Morrison, Quaker, of Baltimore, Maryland, burned what he said was himself. You, Robert McNamara, burned what you said was a concentration of the enemy aggressor, no news medium troubled to put it in quotes. And Norman Morrison, Quaker, of Baltimore, Maryland, burned what he said was himself. He said it with simple materials such as would be found in your kitchen. In your office you were informed. Reporters got cracking frantically on the mental disturbance angle. So far nothing turns up. Norman Morrison, Quaker, of Baltimore, Maryland, burned and while burning screamed. No tip-off, no release, nothing to quote, to manage to put in quotes. Pity the unaccustomed hesitance of the newspaper editorialists. Pity the press photographers not called. Norman Morrison, Quaker of Baltimore, Maryland, burned and was burned and said all that there is to say in that language, twice what is said in yours. It is a strange sect, Mr. McNamara, under advice to try the whole of a thought in silence and to oneself. Well, it may be time in the course of a long reading for another, if not another voice, at least another mentality to obtrude itself. And I do have 3 translations from Baudelaire that I'd like to try out. They're all 3 of them sonnets too, doggone it. And the first is a kind of elegy. It's a poem he calls Le Guignon, which is hard to translate. It means bad luck, more like bad luck what you get at the gaming tables if you keep coming up snake eyes. To lift such weight, to start lifting would take the heart of Sisyphus. The art is long and time is short. Far from any tomb where a cortege might come, my heart like a muffled drum parades, da-da-dum, da-dum. Many a buried rare jewel is sleeping where no pick or spade intrudes. Flowers are yielding their sweet secrets to the air of these deep solitudes. This one's called The Rebel, Le Rebelle. An angel swoops from his into the fool's paradise, snatches up the sinner and shakes him, saying, "You're gonna know the rules or else. I'm your good angel, understand? Get this, you gotta love, no faces, mind you, the feather-brained, the half-assed, the off-key, so Jesus, when he comes in state, will find you spread like a carpet of sweet charity. That's love if you want love. No pat orgasm letting you off the hook. It's pure, it's hot, it's God's own fire. You burn for all you got." Exemplifying his enthusiasm, he loves the sinner more the more he flays him, the more he answers, "I cannot." This is one without a title in Baudelaire. It's usually numbered 27 in the volume Spleen et Idéal. And the first line in French, in my bad pronunciation, goes, "Avec ses vêtements ondoyants et nacrés." With her clothes undulating into 1,000 colors, even when she walks you would think she was dancing. Or think of those tall serpents the holy jugglers weave into ecstasies at the ends of their wands. Like Algeria, like the flat blue over it, like the long swell and counterswell of the sea, she lets herself happen with an indifference free from disdain or malice, merciless. Those eyes, the pick of the polished, semi-precious, that strangeness symbol of anything, that blend in which only gold, steel, light, and diamond enter, inviolate angel, sphinx of ages, star, the very star her hangdog, dark companion, bad time Charlie the poet, names Stérile. And in case you hadn't noticed, I found myself, shall we say, unable to complete the translation within the required limits. In fact, I got the substance of the poem into 12 lines, and I couldn't resist the temptation to turn out of Baudelaire's persona and against him in those last 2 lines. That's always happening to me when I'm translating, and sometimes the results are even more extreme. At one time, I was experimenting with what I called translations from the English. Here are 3. First is called Pigfoot with aces under passes. The heat's on the hooker, drops on the lamb, cops got Booker, who give a damn? The kid's been had, but not me yet. Dad's in his pad, no sweat. This one's called Margaret, Are You Drug? Cool it, Mag. Sure, it's a drag with all that green flaked out. Next thing you know, they'll be changing the color of bread. But look, chick, why panic? 70, 80 years, we'll all be dead. Roll with it, kid. I did. Give it the old benefit of the doubt. I mean, leaves, schmeaves. You sure you ain't just feeling sorry for yourself? And this one's called Lamb. Lamb, what makes you tick? You got a wind-up, a battery-powered, a flywheel, a plug-in, or what? You made out of real fur? You fall out the window, you bust? You shrink? Turn into a no-no? Zip open and have pups? I bet you better than that. I bet you put out by some other outfit. I bet you don't do nothing. I bet you something to eat. Well, again, back to my troubles with translation. Well, this needs no explanation. It's a non-translation, and as it says itself, it came out of a balked effort to translate Villon's ballades, particularly that famous ballade of Dead Ladies, with the refrain, which usually comes out in English, "Where are the snows of yesteryear?" Which is a shame, because Villon, of all French poets, wrote the living language of his time, and we're all sure that entend, the word that translates as yesteryear, didn't sound to him like last century's literary, archaic, obsolete vocabulary. But what do? Robert Lowell tried to translate that doggone ballade. Came out with the last line repeated over and over again, "Where are last year's snows?" And Villon isn't that awkward. So, as I say, I gave up and came out with this called Ballade of the Mislaid Worksheet. Where are the notes I made last year on the flip side of a popcorn package toward my perennial sacrilege upon the muse, another near translation of Villon? But where is Harlow? Where is Norma Talmadge? Norma Jean Baker? Norma Shearer? What tantalizing curve or cleavage? Water under the bridge. Back to my dog-eared dictionnaire. Back to my Fowler's English usage. But where is Mrs. Average American? Remember her, smiling at her discoverer, the census man, a personage at last? And Carol Lombard, where is she? And Mrs. Calvin Coolidge? Water under the bridge. Where are the powers I bargained for, the Archimedean leverage to raise at least my own dead language up? O Edmund Spenser, where in the wildern woods of verbiage hath woned, wended, and whither yore, and oomph, and eld, and yesteryear, and Bernhardt's voice, and Bernhardt's carriage, water under the bridge? L'Envoi. 1,000 scattered cans of footage turning in unison yellower, a piece of French literature, and this, a petty pilferage on both, are yours a while and are water under the bridge. I said in getting started on this reading that my new book seemed rather preoccupied with, perhaps hung up on, violence. Well, it's a time of violence. There are some poems of this non-war that we're now fighting, which I think I'll end the reading with. And it occurs to me I might go back to the first book, Bone Thoughts, and read 2 attempts at war poems out of that before I get on to some of these current ones. It's a hard problem. If you find, as a writer, that you have such an eye to violence, maybe it only means that you have a mind to it and aren't facing up to it. And of course, a number of our black humorists, or just black novelists are, I think, overreacting to that worry. They say, yes, it must mean I have the violence within me, and therefore the only way to write honestly in this day and age is to write as violently as I can. If not in praise of violence, then not presuming to be in its dispraise, since this is me, since this is you, since this is all of us. But let's just say that won't work for me. I have to keep trying, keep struggling out of the materials of violence to make poems which I hope off at some slant, in some resultant vector thrust against violence. But this first one I'm going to read may be making the least struggle against it. I think I was thinking like a novelist, trying to think hard and angrily and factually and briefly. It's called War Story. The 4th of July, he stormed a nest. He won a ribbon but lost his chest. We threw his arms across the rest and kneed him in the chin. You knee them in the chin to drive the dog tag in. The 5th of July, the chaplain wrote. It wasn't much, I needn't quote. The widow lay on her Davenport, letting the news sink in. Since April, she had been letting the news sink in. The 6th of July, the captains stank. They had us pinned from either flank. With all respect to the dead and rank, we wished he was dug in. I mean to save your skin, it says, to get dug in. The word when it came was 3 days old. Lieutenant Jones brought marigolds. The widow got out the captain's olds and took him for a spin, a faster than ever spin, down to the lake and in. And this one, a kind of early Cold War poem. I find in reading to undergraduates these days, I sometimes have to put a footnote on the title, which is Unfriendly Witness, and tell them old stories about Arthur Miller and other people, Dalton Trumbo and so forth. I won't bother with that now. Poem called Unfriendly Witness. I never played the Moor, I never looked to see. I don't know what my hands are for, I know they're not for me. I lent them to my mother. She yanked them into rules and put them with my pencil box as fit to take to school. I lent them to my teacher. She ruled them into pens and sent them home to Father dear, who beat them straight again. I lent them to my judge. He penned them into line, since when they clasp and hold, I swear nothing of yours or mine. I lent them to my sergeant. He lined them into squads and marched them off to sudden death like little piston rods. Death sent them back unused. I squandered them on love. They took the world for comrade then as easy as a glove. And yet the world is heavy and filled with men like me, with tired men, with heavy men that slip my memory, if that be perjury. Back to more recent poems and more sonnets. Heaven help me. This one's called The Deposition. His mouth hangs like a socket from which some noise appropriate to it has been disconnected. Evidence of real violence flakes from his working cheek like dried hot chocolate. Whatever he's been through, these didn't do it. The desk sergeant leaning forward looks merely sick, and the kid back from the corner with coffee for the boys just ill-complected. There is no malice in the detective lieutenant's frown, nor ugliness in the way his fellow officer shoulders deponent's weight by means of deponent's arm. Nothing here to alarm the hastily summoned license bureau stenographer who kneels, straining to follow, taking him down. And this sonnet, called But That I Have Bad Dreams. Not the obscene beefiness of the fence posts holds him, but the exquisiteness of the barbed wire. A late Vogue model casually centerfolds him over her shoulder and carts him into the fire, ceaselessly accomplishing the purification of Buchenwald. His sleep mask is upon him. He guzzles flame like a scalding brine, and this and its freight of dead, the tallowed and hair-stuck bones, is called Scheme of the Dream Devoutly to be Dreamt, Study 9. He is my high school English teacher, Mr. Sales, late chief of a J.A.G. Graves registration team. It is 1946. This night again he fails and swirls in the old white rapids, the only dream. Dusk at the Pullman window, cloudscape fading, the wires astream, convolvulate once more with nightingales. An animal poem, Pit Viper. A slow burn in cold blood is all snake muscle does. The nerves drone their dull red test pattern for days, days. The eyes, black push buttons, are just that. On each side, a fixed dish antenna covers the infrared. The ribs, like a good set of stiff twin calipers, lie easy and don't take measure of what's not there. The skin's dim computer control board arrangement of masked lights betrays no least motion. Take no joy. A strike force is no more than its parts, but these parts work. Dead game defense work specialists, they die well. The point is, they don't choose livings, they don't choose death. God save them, they aren't small-time haters that joined up. Well, the time would come, if one were a conscious literary craftsman, a writer who plotted his course, when the bleak or violent treatment of violent would seem to lead into some kind of dead end, and comedy would seem the only way out. And I wish I could lay claim to that serious motivation behind this poem, but versified jokes usually don't get started from any serious motivation at all. This from the height of triviality, from an afternoon in Rome, Italy, when I was reading, of all things, Life magazine. There was an article on Ian Fleming, and there he was with a beautiful Caribbean picture of him, quoted as saying, "When I shoot fish, I don't wear an aqualung. It evens out the odds." And now I find myself possessed of this poem called I Dreamt I Went Shooting Fish in My Bare Chest. I never shoot fish in an aqualung. It might unbalance the odds. I give the sucker an even break, the sucker, the snapper, the grouper, the hake, and suitable cephalopods. I'm not cast iron. I sometimes quake as I stalk with my weapon unslung, but all advantage I deign to take is a love of danger for danger's sake, and a knack with heaters and rods, a certain knack with heaters and rods. I never shoot fish in an aqualung. The man who would is a red. If I were agent and had my wish, the cad who cheated at shooting fish would get it about the head. It's not that killing is not my dish, perhaps I would have him hung, but mechanism is sissyish, which hedges against the chance the fish will shoot you first instead, draw faster and shoot you first instead. I never shoot fish in an aqualung, whatever the pain or peril. I never shoot fish in an aqualung, I shoot from the rim of the barrel. I never shoot fish in an aqualung, not even the cussedest cods, not even the haddock, however vicious, not even the flounder, and he's delicious, not even the shark, because sharks ain't fishes. It might unbalance the odds. In fact, it might unbalance the barrel. And this is called Late, Late. Where tomahawks flash in the powwow, and Tommy guns deepen the hubbub, and panzers patrol, is the horror I live without sleep for the love of, whose A-bombs respond to the tom-tom, whose halberds react to the ack-ack, while I, as if slugged with a dum-dum, sit back and sit back and sit back until the last gunman is drawn on, last murderous rustler druv loco, last prison camp commandant spat at, and somehow, and poco a poco, the bottles are gone from the six-pack, sensation is gone from the buttocks, old glory dissolves into static, the box is a box is a box. Well, another piece of light verse. Dear fellow teacher. This poem's already a little out of date. It was written, last November and December. And where it mentions 5 whole days, I would now have to change it to 5 whole weeks. But let's not bother. I really designed this thing to have something to read at read-ins against the war in Vietnam. One finally wants to do something a little negative and to be able, for instance, to move to the front of the room and stand up and begin reading a poem that begins, I must confess I'm tired of these demonstrations. Surely there must be better demonstrations against brute force than brute force demonstrations. Come now and let us reason together like the old man says. What kind of a demonstration is this from academically trained minds? Is a stalled freight our cogent demonstration? Is a blocked highway where some unwashed mob panics at a mere word like napalm our idea of perspicacious demonstration? Would Aristotle, master of demonstration, have dignified with a proud name demonstration this massing of dumb bodies under flags? Would Euclid have admired such demonstration? What are we after with these demonstrations? Accommodation? Compromise? Then let that spirit permeate our demonstrations. Was it not Secretary Rusk who said, we have already made our demonstration of readiness to negotiate, unquote? What could be more amenable than that? And had we not in fact for 5 whole days called off, forsworn, and utterly regrouped, for that is how we made said demonstration, our prior and like-minded demonstration of readiness to negotiate, unquote? Were we discouraged? Did we not resume what McNamara calls our demonstration that we shall not be bluffed or made to yield until, in Bundy's words, some demonstration of comparable, etc., unquote? Lyndon, I'm sick and tired of demonstrations. There is a demon in these demonstrations. I'm fed up with a mere word demonstration. Furthermore, I accept your demonstration that this or that or any demonstration's about as much use as a plugged piaster. Like alibis, like sides of beef on spits, like children in thatched villages of huts. If you don't watch them, they get overdone. That's the damn thing about these demonstrations. Let's everybody go out and stop one. Here's a fairly long one, and it's the one I'll end with. It's called Poem Issued by Me to Congressman Abbott, Abernethy, Adair, Adabo, Albert, Anderson, Andrews, Annuncio, Aarons, Ashbrook, Ashley, Ashmore, Aspinall, Ayers, Baldwin, Bandstra, Baring, Barrett, Bates, Batten, Beckworth, Belcher, Bell, Bennett, Berry, Betts, Bingham, Blatnick, Boggs, Boland, Bowling, Bolton, Bow, Bray, Brock, Brooks. The title's a long title, and I think of it more as an illustration for the poem. It goes on down an almost complete roster of the Congress of the United States, including one man who took the care to report himself as having intended to vote favorably on the bill, although he wasn't able to be there for the roll call, my own Congressman Schmithauser, and one man named Smith of New York, who voted no. In any case, one can consider, for the purposes of this reading, the entire title read. Your poem is issued to you, so you may burn it, and so it may cost you burning, and so it is issued to you. Burn it. Perhaps no more than a draft will have as yet been issued. There have been critical shortages. Honor the draft and burn it. Perhaps in your case only a symbol is issued pending the draft, pending completion of the true poem. Burn it. The issue is not in the poem, but in the burning. The poem is not in the symbol, but in the burning issue. The poem is not in the flesh even, but in what issues burning after the flesh and after action, the sonnet of tension, the absolute sonnet of quiet guard. Your hands are full with the plain hardware of it. Interval, dress, alignment. This is it. What's it to you what some junk sculptor later makes of its wasted work breath? This is it. Uses are what you drill from this hard center. Meanings are what you burn off into slag. Cause is the bright and accidental spiral you plane from it to leave it what it is. Whatever sudden emptiness may send you whining like shrapnel through the bars back home. Whatever you drag home to disremember bloodily and obscenely and at length, this will be something else. Head down, knees high, weapon at high port, move. Your hands are full. Quiet. A calyx closes. Heavy leaves, foreign to you in their simplicity of outline and arrangement, slowly lose outline and then arrangement. Their red-green and the transparent oranges and blues of a fragmented distance gone to black, a darkness is composed. Its black-on-black reciprocating engine of gun barrels cranks over once, fires once, and lashes back. Nothing is here the night so much imperils as loneliness. Nothing the breathing dark so much dispels. Your fix upon the known is on point flashes answering to your own, the way no pulse or persuasion has or shall. Poem, you want a poem? We got poems, baby. Bow, Bray, Brock, Brooks, we're the gunners, got the gooks. Pickle, Pike, Pogue, Poff, Charlie seen us and took off. Roads, roads, rivers, rivers, give us the job and we delivers. White, white, whitener, Whitten, nobody sets back the hard-bitten special detachment rangers. Peace, wanderer, patience at your hard labor. Later, almost in silence and by surprise, must come to you, if at all, the at night now wept for, the halfway around the world awaited, rising, as out of a grayed horizon, objective. This, slow outcrop of bone faces, baring of teeth in the brief space of a doorway in ashes. This, Cathay, Santo Domingo, some such name. The whole West waits to award you. You need only, but a figure out of your own squad bumps past you, rigorous, heavy-laden, and unimpeachable upon the work of confiscation. Others fan into the near distance, smoke obscured. Smoke falls back on itself around you, leaves you somewhere. A light truck motor labors, lone sound of a dark March morning in some St. Paul, the exhaust clouds lifting, neighbor and stranger lifting, as out of its own breath rising, objective. This, blackface, implacable, death his be-all and end-all, death his intense meditation, death his design. Your poem, when issued to you, will be enemy and response. It will be crabbed, wrought, strained, and in fact poetical. It will be your ballad of Roger Young, explaining how at impossible odds and with what grace. It will be your song of songs, which is Solomon's, saying other than what it says, because what it says it cannot be saying, just as when the death said in the doorway, who is, yes, a conspirator, he has spilled his guts, and who would, yes, have maintained his insidious cover until the leaves were taken off, says to you, I am dead, I do not move, not happy, not unhappy, I am dead, I do not move, not feeling, not unfeeling, and you, because you will have your moment, you with your flag and book, you because there can be no such elsewhere, indolent in the laps of unfurrowed seas, hammer the words like gold and unfold them. I am soulless, relentless, remorseless, insatiable, I shall not be moved. Trophies. In the display case of post 10,000 and something, Algeciras, Georgia, your own eyes, half hung over, but all there, in a disturbed reflection over brass nameplates on Walnut, Trudeau, Roundtree, Green, and with the names the years, and with the years half of a banner head, voices alarm, An arm upraised and pumping and cut off at the white edge of a bowling roster. 8 wide-open-mouthed men straining their neck tendons in a curled, brown-stained photograph with whores, captioned Saigon, containing someone's brave tablecloth manifesto, get 'em Rebs, and one small face worthy of Lippo-Lippi. Deserve, sweet hell, deserve what your sick blood vibrates as these things vibrate to hear told. Didn't we get 'em? Didn't we take arms and slog halfway around the world to get them before they got us? White shirtbacks rising. And won't we get 'em? Let 'em show up now, calling themselves Americans. Oh, yes, selling us up the crick with their half measures. Dead men around a table, their dead friends. Pin-ups of yellowed championship clippings. Their national commander with the same vigilant, just, and just about fed-up glare as the glare behind you, as the glare of your awaited turn, your firm stride forward. Your poem, when issued to you, bearing symbols, bearing a date, will be neat, sweet, proper, and terminal. Need it be said this late that these which you read are verses, verses to celebrate me and my righteous posture, my facts and brains. Light them, they will at once incinerate. Burn as you will your poem, the burning remains. Here ends the document as issued and read into the record, but the gentlemen from Arizona, California, Indiana, and Louisiana, among others, having remarked upon the lack, strange in a document of this nature, of due acknowledgement to the supreme authority above us all, and the gentleman from Iowa having at hand a suitable hymn and recessional, we here insert in the record the following expansion of remarks. Mine eyes have seen the glory of hard work at least. I have kept the bore unpitted and the action greased, even when it ain't a fit night out for man or beast. What's your story, mister? Brandenburg, Louisiana, New Vienna, Minnesota, Venezuela, West Virginia, get out of my backyard. I have seen at least the star shell and the muzzle flash. I have sabotaged for glory and a little cash. I have fought my jammed controls right up until the crash. What's your story, mister? Macedonia, Nevada, Himalaya, Oklahoma, Okinawa, Indiana, get out of my backyard. I have walked my 20,000-mile perimeter. I have cruised at 80 fathoms and 1,000 per. If I didn't, they would get my wife and ravish her. What's your story, mister? South Kamchatka, North Dakota, Lebanon, South Carolina, Dutch Guiana, Arizona, get out of my backyard. In the beauty of a moment of camaraderie, with a God-forsaken bunch of gooks across the sea, I shall die to make men safe in my society. What's your story, mister? Guatemala, California, Anatolia, Nebraska, Hispaniola, Pennsylvania, get out of my backyard. You take off your insignia. You seek cover. Maybe they still come sniping at you. Maybe the outline of a bloused fatigue uniform is a recognition pattern. You take off your insignia. Through white wildernesses of rock to where white water spins from the snows, still climbing in a white silence, they cut to ribbons with their chatter. You take off your insignia. The crest holds you a moment, meeting, of no color other than that of sunset, their distressed and automatic red-face compulsive stutter. You take off your insignia. Escape is a simple melting into the landscape.